Man, I had to go outside and go for a walk before I did this video to cool off. And I'm still pissed off. I'm still pissed. This was straight up sabotage. Stephanie White, you are a bum. Aaliyah Boston, you are even more of a bum. You are a $6 million piece of garbage out there. Your ass can't make a layup. You refuse to pass the ball to Caitlin Clark. You stink. You stink. You've been intentionally not passing the ball to Caitlin Clark for the last 7-8 games. We've been watching and counting. I've been watching your ass not pass her the ball. You can't make a layup to save your life. You just as garbage at layups.
She turned her back, walking directly away from the bench as the arena erupted into absolute chaos. Caitlin Clark finally reached her breaking point, completely blowing up after an agonizing 91-85 collapse against the Dallas Wings. Head coach Stephanie White stood completely paralyzed on the sideline, utterly stunned by the furious reaction unfolding before her eyes. It was not merely a devastating road loss to an opponent that had dropped 8 of their previous 11 games. It was the explosive climax of an escalating internal war that had been brewing behind closed doors for weeks, ready to tear this entire franchise apart.
Kelsey Mitchell in it. She played a hell of a game, but this thing was 100% about Kelsey Mitchell, and I think it had everything to do with them seeing Caitlin Clark climbing that MVP ladder, and they said, hell no, we are sabotaging this, and that is exactly what happened. The Indiana Fever lose to a team in the Dallas Wings that lost 8 out of their last 11 games. You could thank Stephanie White, who wanted to make it all about Kelsey Mitchell. Welcome to Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the channel, hit the bell notification, hype the video. That'd be greatly appreciated, man. I am disgusted with the Indiana Fever. I am disgusted. Stephanie White, get your bum ass in.
The devastating fracture on the court was impossible to ignore from the very opening possession. White drew up the initial play exclusively for Kelsey Mitchell, completely bypassing Clark as a primary playmaker. Clark executed the scripted sequence, delivering an unselfish bounce pass that sent Mitchell straight to the free throw line. But that single sequence set a disturbing precedent that dictated the entire evening. Rather than balancing the offensive attack, the coaching staff doubled down on an isolated game plan. It quickly signaled to everyone watching that Clark was being pushed out of the central driver's seat entirely.
Hype the video. That'd be greatly appreciated, man. I am disgusted with the Indiana Fever. I am disgusted. Stephanie White, get your bum ass in the trash. Get your bum ass in the trash. You are a fucking bum of a coach. You are terrible. You are terrible. You mean to tell me the very first play of the game was ran for Kelsey Mitchell? Caitlin Clark threw her a bounce pass. Kelsey Mitchell went to turn the corner, got fouled, went to the free throw line. From that point on, every single play in the first half was for Kelsey Mitchell. Nobody else could establish a rhythm because you did nothing else for.
Inside the building, analysts quickly detected an unsettling strategy that felt deliberately designed to freeze out the generational rookie. Clark was climbing rapidly up the league's official MVP ladder, gaining immense national momentum with every dominant performance. Yet the offensive scheme deployed against Dallas seemed tailored specifically to shut down her individual rhythm by orchestrating everything through Mitchell, at the expense of team flow. The Fever systematically dismantled the very dynamic that made them dangerous. The tension on the hardwood grew visibly thicker with each passing offensive possession.
Kofi Cunningham to get a shot from 3. You like by the time people got looks, they were in no rhythm. There was no rhythm by the time they actually got looks at the rim. Aaliyah Boston is trash. She does not set screens. You got people tackling Caitlin Clark. Aaliyah Boston, big, soft, sorry ass, don't do nothing. She's a big, soft, sorry piece of if you ask me out there. Aaliyah Boston is ass. $6 million of ass juice out there. She ain't did nothing. Got dominated by Jessica Shepard. Aaliyah Boston, get your sorry ass in the trash too. Go on. Get your sorry ass in the trash.
The statistical disparity throughout the first 2 quarters exposed the staggering reality of what was happening on the floor. Indiana did not run a single pick-and-roll action or ball screen designed for Clark until 15 seconds remained in the second quarter. Think about the sheer absurdity of having the most electrifying playmaker in modern basketball standing idle on the perimeter, without a single off-ball screen until the third quarter. It completely neutralized her scoring threat while forcing her to watch from the sidelines of the play. The frustration building inside Clark was beginning to boil over.
Straight up bum. Stephanie White, you are the biggest piece of garbage, biggest piece of trash out there. Take a look at this. I'm glad. Look, Caitlin Clark is turning her back on Stephanie White. She's over it. Can we end this thing at the end of the season? Shout out to Kelsey. You played a good game. We're going to get into that. I want this thing broken up by the end of the season. You can't afford both. Pick one and let's move on. At this point, I'd rather y'all keep Kelsey, Stephanie, and AB together in Indiana, and let's let Caitlin go elsewhere. Can we go elsewhere, please? I just want to get the hell away from here. I want to get away from these weirdos. I want to get away from this sabotaging organization. I want to get away from everything. Take a look at this.
Stephanie White appeared completely oblivious to the massive breakdown in team chemistry taking place right in front of her. Cameras constantly caught the head coach barking relentless instructions at Clark, nagging her during critical dead ball situations without offering any real schematic support. Instead of adjusting the offense to free up her star guard, White seemed noticeably agitated whenever the ball actually found its way into Clark's hands. The body language between coach and superstar deteriorated in real time, exposing a massive rift that could no longer be hidden behind diplomatic press conferences.
Look at her. Look at her. Look at her. She don't want to hear it no more. Now look at Stephanie White when Caitlin Clark has the ball right here. She don't even want Caitlin to have the ball. She want Kelsey to have the ball. You see that reaction from the coach? You see that? They hate each other, and it's okay. I'll be glad when this thing is over. I will be glad when this thing is over. Get Caitlin Clark the hell away from this team. Get her the hell out of here, man. Caitlin Clark don't want nothing to do with Stephanie White, and Stephanie White don't want nothing to do with Caitlin Clark, which is fine. Can we stop this whole kumbaya thing, this fake thing? Stop standing up for Stephanie White.
The on-court execution became even more alarming when looking at the front-court dynamics and passing distributions. Aaliyah Boston, a centerpiece earning a massive salary, repeatedly refused to execute basic handoffs with Clark on the perimeter. Observers tracked multiple sequences where Boston would initiate an action toward Clark, only to suddenly pivot away at the last second and force the ball directly to Mitchell. This deliberate pattern occurred repeatedly throughout the matchup. It left Clark stranded with zero momentum while opponents aggressively trapped her, without fearing any interior punishment.
Y'all had to go Kate for her at the podium. Y'all lost to a team that lost 8 out of their last 11 games. Caitlin Clark didn't play well. You shot 1 free throw. That shows me you had a lack of aggression. I felt like you checked out in the second quarter, to be honest. I watched you check out. They ran everything for Kelsey Mitchell. You came down the court. You wasn't even looking for no ball screens no more because you knew they wasn't coming. And you know once you pass the ball, you're never getting the ball back. You know that. If we all know it, you know it too. You know Aaliyah Boston don't give you the ball when you give it to her. You know when you go for the handoff with Aaliyah Boston, she's going to do this and then go the opposite way and give it to Kelsey. You know that.
Boston's failure to provide adequate physical protection in screen and roll scenarios left Clark entirely vulnerable to brutal defensive hits. Dallas defenders were practically tackling Clark on the perimeter, yet Boston offered virtually no resistance or solid contact to create separation. To make matters significantly worse, Clark continuously spoon-fed high-percentage looks around the rim that Boston repeatedly failed to convert. The total lack of physical presence allowed Dallas forward Jessica Shepard to utterly dominate the interior, exposing Indiana's absolute softness in the paint.
Game plan. Every game has been that. This girl body just shut down the last game, just like it did in the playoffs last year, and she plays 35 minutes. But she played well with her opportunities. They made it her a focal point. They made it a point to get her established. They made it a point to get Kelsey a rhythm. And when she got that rhythm, she kept it going. They never made it a point to get anybody else a rhythm. Sophie Cunningham, 0-4 from 3. By the time Sophie Cunningham got a look at the rim, the game was almost over. She had no rhythm. No rhythm. Monique Billings sucks. The biggest crock of dog shit for $800,000. I don't know how she's getting 8. She sucks. Monique Billings.
By the midpoint of the second quarter, Clark's demeanor underwent a visible, radical transformation. Realizing that the offensive sets were deliberately running away from her, she completely disengaged from the offensive flow. She stopped hunting for screens that she knew would never arrive, fully aware that once the ball left her hands, she would never see it returned. The explosive joy and boundless energy that define her game were replaced by cold, calculated detachment. She had mentally checked out after recognizing the internal game being played around her. The box score reflected the brutal consequences of this dysfunctional offensive scheme. Clark finished the night with just 10 points, 9 assists, and 4 rebounds on a dismal 4 of 15 shooting display, including 2 of 8 from beyond the arc. More telling than anything was the fact that she attempted only a single free throw all night, proving how thoroughly the game plan eliminated her trademark aggression when she desperately tried to force the issue during the third quarter. Her rhythm had been entirely destroyed by quarters of forced inactivity. Meanwhile, Kelsey Mitchell put up massive individual numbers, dropping 37 points on 9 of 18 shooting while converting all 15 of her free throw attempts. On the surface, casual viewers saw an extraordinary individual scoring exhibition that kept the team competitive. However, insiders understood that this production came at the direct expense of team harmony and offensive balance. The entire tactical approach was warped around feeding Mitchell to preserve an individual scoring streak, leaving every other key contributor completely stranded without a rhythm. The collateral damage of this singular offensive focus extended across the entire roster. Reliable perimeter sharpshooter Sophie Cunningham went entirely scoreless, missing all 4 of her three-point attempts simply because she never touched the ball in rhythm. By the time supporting players received touches late in the shot clock, the game was already slipping away. Key rotation pieces like Monique Billings struggled immensely to make any positive impact, highlighting how utterly broken the offensive structure becomes when 4 players are relegated to passive spectators. On the opposing end, the Dallas Wings capitalized ruthlessly on Indiana's growing internal friction. Iraq Ogunbale poured in 32 points, relentlessly attacking the Fever's fractured defensive rotations with total confidence. Jessica Shepard delivered a historic performance, shooting 10 of 11 in the first half alone before finishing with 26 points and 8 rebounds. Dallas, despite having lost 8 of their previous 11 matchups, played with absolute unity, thoroughly exposing a Fever roster that was actively crumbling from within. The emotional climax of the evening occurred during a tense timeout late in the second half, as Stephanie White aggressively stepped toward Clark to issue another round of sideline criticism. The star guard did something truly shocking. Clark visibly turned her back on her head coach, threw her hands in the air, and walked completely away toward the end of the bench. The raw contempt and lack of communication were undeniable. The sideline went totally silent as teammates looked on, fully aware that a catastrophic line had just been crossed. This explosive sideline confrontation shattered the carefully curated illusion of team unity that the organization had been projecting. For months, Clark had dutifully defended coaching decisions at post-game press conferences, acting as the ultimate professional despite questionable rotations. But her public refusal to even engage with White proved that the facade was officially dead. The mutual distrust had reached a boiling point where neither the coach nor the franchise cornerstone could conceal their bitter resentment from national cameras. Front office insiders are now sounding the alarm regarding the catastrophic leadership failure at the helm. Stephanie White was brought in to elevate this young roster into championship contention by maximizing Clark's once-in-a-generation playmaking abilities. Instead, her rigid offensive schemes and questionable player management have systematically alienated the most valuable asset in the sport. Coaching staff decisions that actively undermine a generational talent in pursuit of isolated stats represent pure organizational mismanagement that cannot be tolerated. The growing friction between the backcourt stars has reached a point of absolute unsustainability. While Mitchell possesses undeniable scoring prowess, the reality is that an offense cannot successfully operate with 2 dominant guards pulling in completely opposite philosophical directions. The current hierarchy creates constant structural tension, forcing the organization into an impossible corner. When the front office assesses the long-term future, they will inevitably have to make a definitive choice between these competing offensive visions. Compounding the crisis is the glaring lack of accountability within the starting frontcourt. Boston's massive contract demands an elite two-way standard comparable to the league's truly dominant superstars. Instead, her glaring inability to finish routine looks at the rim or establish physical screen contact has severely crippled the team's half-court execution. When your starting center consistently fails to capitalize on elite playmaking, it creates a compounding wave of frustration that completely breaks an offense. The bitter loss to Dallas marks a dangerous turning point that could permanently derail Indiana's postseason aspirations. Dropping a crucial game to a struggling opponent is bad enough, but doing so while exposing massive internal divisions is catastrophic. The body language displayed throughout the fourth quarter showed a group of players operating in complete isolation rather than a cohesive unit. If the coaching staff cannot command the locker room's respect, the season risks completely unraveling before their eyes. Fans across the basketball landscape have erupted with furious reactions, demanding sweeping changes from the top down. Social media platforms were instantly flooded with video breakdowns highlighting every ignored cut, every bypassed passing lane, and the unmistakable moment Clark walked away from White. The overwhelming consensus points toward a broken system that is actively suffocating the league's biggest star. Public pressure is mounting exponentially on ownership to address the glaring dysfunction before it causes irreversible damage. Clark's visible exhaustion during the post-game moments told a story far deeper than a single defeat. She is carrying the immense weight of the entire league spotlight while actively battling schematic sabotage from her own coaching staff. Playing under that level of microscopic scrutiny becomes completely impossible when your own teammates refuse the ball. The psychological toll of being isolated within your own offensive system was written all over her face as she exited the arena floor. The front office is now facing an unprecedented crisis that demands immediate, decisive intervention from ownership. Allowing a head coach to alienate a franchise superstar is an unforgivable blunder that could alter the trajectory of the organization for years. If White cannot adapt her philosophy to prioritize Clark's generational vision, difficult personnel decisions must be executed immediately. The luxury of waiting for things to naturally resolve has officially run out after this catastrophic Dallas meltdown. The Indiana Fever stand at a critical historical crossroads, where their next move will define the franchise's entire era. Either the organization commits fully to building around Caitlin Clark's transcendent talents with an aligned coaching staff, or they risk driving away the greatest drawing card in modern basketball history. The explosive breakdown witnessed against Dallas was not an isolated bad night. It was a definitive declaration that the current dynamic is completely broken beyond repair. When the final buzzer sounded in Dallas, it signaled far more than a simple 6-point defeat in the standings. It exposed an unsustainable war of egos, deeply flawed tactical decisions, and a franchise cornerstone who has officially had enough of being marginalized. If Stephanie White and the Fever leadership fail to heed this massive wake-up call, the consequences will permanently reshape the landscape of the entire sport. The real battle in Indiana has only just begun, and the fallout will be monumental.